The Holy Gospel according to St. Matthew, the 14th chapter. Now when Jesus heard about the beheading of John the Baptist, he withdrew from there in a boat to a deserted place by himself. But when the crowds heard it, they followed him on foot from the towns. When he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion for them and cured their sick. When it was evening, the disciples came to him and said, "This is a deserted place, and the hour is now late. Send the crowds away so that they may go into the villages and buy food for themselves." Jesus said to them, "They need not go away. You give them something to eat." They replied, "We have nothing here but 5 loaves and 2 fish." And he said, "Bring them here to me." When he ordered the crowds to sit down on the grass, taking the 5 loaves and 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and blessed and broke the loaves and gave them to the disciples. And the disciples gave them to the crowds, and all ate and were filled. And they took up what was left over of the broken pieces, 12 baskets full. And those who ate were about 5,000 men, besides the women and children. The Gospel of the Lord. Please be seated. Grace, peace, and mercy are yours from the triune God. Amen. This miracle is the only miracle, aside from the resurrection, that's recorded in each of the Gospels. So it's important. I sometimes like to talk about Jesus' billboard top 40 stories in the Bible, and this is one of them. The feeding of the multitudes, the feeding of the 5,000 plus the women and children. And it has been looked at in 100 different ways, 100 different times by theologians and pastors ever since it was first recorded. It's an amazing story. It really is. But what I alluded to in the email from this week is something that still is holding on to me this morning, and that is the sheer diversity that was there. I presume was present in the crowd that day. The crowd that followed Jesus out there. What's a crowd? Everybody, right? Sick people, people that needed to be healed, humans in need, people who might have been a little curious and had some free time, people that were desperate and may not believe in anything, but they had heard a rumor that Jesus could give life, so why not try it out? Older people who had been around the block and knew and seen a lot. Young people full of dreams and idyllic hope. Religious authority who were skeptical. This was a crowd, people from all walks of life, together following Jesus out there to a deserted place, looking for something, some desperately looking for something. And at some point in that day, when it was time to eat, they ate together. What did that meal look like, friends? Imagine it. What did that meal look like? All those different people. What happened? People were satisfied, filled in a world where eating until one was not satisfied, or one was satisfied, was not common. There was a lot of food there. How? Amazing. And people didn't separate. There was no special rooms for people who were wealthy. There weren't any pillows or good clean tables for people to eat at. No waiters and waitresses and people to serve them. The ceremoniously unclean people, the sinners, the tax collectors, the sick, those who cared for the sick. Remember, there were sick people come out there looking for healing. And people taking care of them. And when you care for sick people, you become unclean in the temple. The workers, the poor, They were treated the same as the rich, as the people who had planned ahead a little better, or the people who might have been educated a little differently, or by all appearances seemed to have their lives together. And they ate, and they were filled. All of them. Together, the whole crowd, they were all satisfied. When you think about that, all those different people with different ideas, different thoughts about clean and unclean, good and bad, right and wrong, and all of them eating together, that's bonkers. I mean, find a spot where that happens in our world, right? Jesus made a meal out of just a few loaves, and the disciples served it. People ate, a miracle happened, something happened, and that meal has become central to what we do, or at least a meal of abundance and equality very much like it. Right? Central. Every Sunday, we gather around a table and we celebrate Jesus showing up and never sending us away. Every Sunday, we gather around at the same level with a crowd open to all people that's supposed to be open to all people. And every Sunday, we, the crowd and the disciples, gather around to witness something miraculous happening. Something happening that changes lives. We are told to feed one another without anything keeping us from one another. Nothing separating us from each other or God. And today we'll do the same thing. Around the table, here at the rails, something's going to happen. But after church, I hope you stick around together and witness something else miraculous happening too. People in our community, making sure kids in our community are ready to go back to school, and we, St. Mark's, get the opportunity to be a part of it. To walk around and see with our own eyes the abundance that comes around to help make sure everyone is satisfied. We get a chance to be a part of answering the call of Jesus, telling the church, you feed them. You help them. We get to walk around and pick up the extras. 12 baskets full, right? I promise you, as someone who has worked with the groups putting this thing on, these are not polished professionals that you might think of at a nonprofit putting things on. It's not a perfectly organized nonprofits doing this thing. They are ordinary folks who are answering the call as best they can. They have 2 loaves and 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread when it seems like they probably need a lot more. But with God, they are finding a way. We are finding a way with them. The sermon, if you are willing to hear and see what is good, will continue after worship in the parking lot. And I hope you let it speak to you. Amen.